In a significant diplomatic development, Lithuania's Ministry of Foreign Affairs recently confirmed that the Chinese embassy in Lithuania no longer has any accredited diplomatic or staff members. The Chinese embassy has effectively disappeared from Lithuania. On June 24th, Chinese media outlet NetEase reported the event, expressing disappointment. The report stated that on May 18, 2025, the last Chinese diplomat in Lithuania, after completing official duties abroad, was barred from re-entering Lithuania at the airport. The reason given was that the diplomat's credentials were invalid. From that moment, Lithuania became the first country in the world to completely reject the entry of Chinese diplomats. Lithuanian border authorities clarified that although the diplomat held a diplomatic passport with Schengen Area visa exemptions, his diplomatic status has expired, and he had a record of overstaying. As a result, he no longer had diplomatic immunity. The passport he held was considered a regular Chinese passport. Chinese nationals entering the Schengen Area on a regular passport must apply for a visa. The diplomat was detained at the airport for 9 hours before being asked to leave and was eventually sent back to Istanbul. So, why did Lithuania take such a stance towards Chinese diplomats? The origins of the issue trace back to the fall of 2021, when Lithuania allowed Taiwan to establish a Taiwanese representative office in its capital, Vilnius, instead of using the commonly seen Taipei designation used by other European countries. This move was perceived by China as recognizing Taiwan's sovereignty, leading China to downgrade diplomatic relations with Lithuania and change its embassy in Lithuania to a liaison office. Lithuania did not take reciprocal measures but continued to recognize the Chinese mission in Lithuania as an embassy. Lithuania also criticized China for violating diplomatic norms. As a result, China ceased recognizing Lithuanian diplomats' credentials for service in China, and all Lithuanian diplomatic staff were withdrawn from Beijing. Since then, China has attempted several times to send personnel to Lithuania under the guise of a liaison office. However, Lithuania refused to recognize this office and did not issue the necessary diplomatic credentials. For the past few years, Chinese diplomats remained in Lithuania under expired accreditations and were allowed short-term stays under Schengen Area exemptions. As bilateral relations continued to deteriorate, China resorted to sending diplomats from third countries to carry out tasks in Lithuania. Lithuania's Ministry of Foreign Affairs had made it clear that anyone entering Lithuania for diplomatic purposes without prior notification will be listed as persona non grata. In late 2024, Lithuania expelled 3 Chinese diplomats for violating diplomatic norms, one of whom was involved in a hit-and-run incident in Durkiniskai, a city in southern Lithuania. Investigations revealed that this diplomat's accreditation had long since expired. Local media reported that legislator Agridas Bakrevičius asked Prime Minister Ganteras Plakus and Foreign Minister Kęstutis Budrys about the progress of relations with China during a parliamentary inquiry earlier this year. Bakrevičius noted that he met twice with Chinese representatives in February, and it seemed China was interested in restoring bilateral ties. However, on June 9th, he was suddenly informed that all Chinese embassy staff would be leaving, with no plans for the restriction of diplomatic relations in the near future. In response to the situation, Lithuania's Minister of Foreign Affairs remarked, "We hope that both sides can return to a path of normalization, but currently the initiative is not in our hands." He added, "We hope that Chinese diplomatic personnel and our personnel stationed in Beijing can receive formal recognition and legal protection on an equal basis. There are diplomatic relations between Lithuania and China. The current issue lies in the practical operation of the representative system, and this is not Lithuania's fault." Prime Minister Plakus revealed on June 16th that Lithuania has submitted a specific proposal to China, hoping to restore diplomatic representation between the two countries. However, he emphasized that the proposal does not involve changing the name of the Taiwan Representative Office. During a press conference that day, Plakus stated, "Our proposal does not include any adjustment to the name of the Taiwan Representative Office. We hope China will respond and restore ambassador-level diplomatic relations." Although Lithuania and China officially maintain diplomatic relations, practical interaction has nearly come to a standstill. The Lithuanian government emphasized that normal exchanges can only resume if Chinese diplomats are legally accredited and both countries' representatives' offices are established on an equal basis. Currently, official communication between Lithuania and China is managed by the Chinese mission to the European Union. China has yet to respond to Lithuania's proposal or announce any new diplomatic arrangements for Lithuania. Senior analysts have pointed out that China is known for its bullying diplomacy, particularly when dealing with countries it considers weaker. Regarding Lithuania's stance on Taiwan's diplomatic office, China views Lithuania as a small European country, which dared to take actions that even the UK, France, and Germany have avoided. The decision to use the Taiwan name was seen as a challenge to China, which led to strong reactions and interference in Lithuania's domestic affairs. In the view of the Chinese government, the concept of equality and respect is often overshadowed by tactics of influence and negotiation. When the Chinese Communist Party assesses that it is not in a position of strength, it may employ deceptive strategies and make promises that are not always followed through. In its dealings with other nations, such as the United States, it has been known to attempt to undermine opponents through various means. When China perceives itself as holding a stronger position, it may take a more assertive approach, as seen in its actions regarding Hong Kong and its agreements with the UK. Prime Minister Palakis, who assumed office at the end of last year, revealed that China had attempted to alter the diplomatic status between the two countries. China wanted Lithuania to comply with its stance on Taiwan, likely offering private incentives in return. However, the new Lithuanian government stood firm on this principle, publicly stating that the issue of Taiwan's name was non-negotiable. Palakis's rejection of China's demands was a public rebuke, marking another humiliation for China. Lithuania's strong stance on Taiwan is rooted in its history. Having endured significant oppression, Lithuania values its freedom and is unwilling to bow to powerful nations or compromise under pressure from dictators. During the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Lithuania was one of the most vocal supporters of Ukraine, viewing Ukraine as the victim of bullying. Similarly, in the case of Taiwan, Lithuania has been one of the strongest public supporters. Lithuania was once one of the most economically prosperous countries in Eastern Europe. During World War II and the Cold War, Lithuania was occupied by both Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. When it was under Soviet control, Lithuanians felt their situation was even more tragic than that of Poland. While Poland was also under Soviet control, it maintained a facade of sovereignty and independence, whereas Lithuania completely lost its sovereignty. All of Lithuania's industries were nationalized by the Soviet Union, and a large number of Russian immigrants moved to Lithuania, displacing local residents from their homes. Lithuanians were forced to learn Russian, while the Russian colonists did not integrate into the local culture, subjecting Lithuanians to many humiliations. Lithuanians felt they had been victims of Soviet ethnic cleansing, experiencing cultural eradication, brainwashing, and heavy surveillance, abuses they now see as strikingly similar to those of contemporary China. Thus, when the Soviet Union collapsed, and people of Lithuania, along with Estonia and Latvia, fiercely fought for independence. Now, as Lithuania faces a situation with communist China similar to what it experienced under the Soviet regime, the familiar signs of intimidation and dominance have naturally triggered resistance among the Lithuanian people. Lithuanians believe that their relations with Taiwan and how they choose to engage with Taiwan is a fundamental national right. They argue that China has no authority to dictate how Lithuania should conduct itself. Furthermore, Lithuania is a small country and does not depend on trade with China for survival. Its trade relations with Taiwan are sufficient. Taiwan is seen as far more credible than the Chinese government. Most members of the current Lithuanian government are strong supporters of Taiwan. So, Chinese pressure on Lithuania regarding Taiwan only results in further embarrassment for China. An important reason behind Lithuania's stance on China today is its deep understanding of communist regimes. Lithuanians know that they must never give in to communist regimes. They recognize that if China resorts to coercive tactics, the only way to deal with it is on equal terms. Since the Chinese Communist Party downgraded its embassy in Lithuania, Lithuania has banned all Chinese diplomatic personnel from entering the country. In 2024, China violated the Geneva Conventions by sending 3 spies disguised as diplomats into Lithuania, only to be expelled, causing a loss of credibility in the international community. Of course, the expulsion of Chinese diplomats is not an isolated incident. In December of the previous year, the Paraguayan government also expelled a Chinese diplomat, citing Taiwan-related issues. The diplomat had attempted to pressure the Paraguayan government into severing ties with Taiwan. So why is Lithuania's official expulsion of Chinese diplomats today linked to the ongoing Middle East conflict that has garnered global attention? What did Lithuania observe during this process? First, Lithuania noticed Russia's remarkably restrained and low-key response after the US attacked Iran's nuclear facilities. On June 23rd, Iranian foreign minister arrived in Moscow to meet with President Putin. While Putin expressed support for Iran, he did not directly condemn the US. Instead, he mentioned that he had recently spoken with US President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, and only said that they would explore ways to cooperate in resolving the current situation. This indicates that Putin's strategy of improving relations with the US will not change, as doing so could lead to further complications in the Russia-Ukraine war. If Moscow mishandles the situation, it risks losing opportunities for negotiation and peace. What stands out to Lithuania is that China's actions appear even weaker than Russia's, retreating more swiftly. After the destruction of Iran's nuclear facilities by the US, with Iran seemingly on the brink of collapse, videos on China's Douyin platform that had consistently supported Iran disappeared. Ironically, new propaganda clips appeared claiming that Iran has always stabbed China in the back. Many people mistakenly think that Iran is our good friend and that we must support them. Let me tell you, that's completely wrong. Don't rush to blindly pick a side. You need to understand the truth first and see what kind of people they are. Did you know how Huawei and ZTE were sanctioned in 2018? Besides HSBC, the biggest contributor to this was Iran. At first, we thought it was tough for Iran because of US sanctions, and others wouldn't dare to do business with them. We thought, let's do business with them quietly, without the US noticing. So big companies like Huawei and ZTE helped Iran set up communication networks. But then, Iran, in exchange for Russia's electronic warfare systems, voluntarily shared Huawei and ZTE's communication data with Russia, causing sensitive information to leak, which later led to a series of consequences. Then ZTE paid a fine of $890 million, and Huawei was forced to exit the 5G project in Iran. This incident also gave the US an excuse to impose tech sanctions on us in 2018. This was the first time they stabbed us in the back. He mentioned that the second instance occurred after the signing of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. At that time, he felt that relations with the West had improved, so he immediately began distracting himself from China. Many contracts that had already been signed, such as the Tehran Metro extension and the Isfahan refinery project, were suddenly abandoned, with the projects shifting to European companies instead. The third event occurred in 2021, when China and Iran signed a comprehensive cooperation plan covering major areas such as energy, infrastructure, and defense, with a total investment of approximately $400 billion. The agreement also included the use of China's Beidou system to replace GPS and joint development of a free trade zone in the Strait of Hormuz. However, not long after, he started to backtrack. First, he refused to disclose details of foreign exchange reserves, then diverted payments for oil exports to China to instead purchase gold from Turkey and pharmaceuticals from India. This led to a disruption in the financing of Chinese company-led refinery projects. Furthermore, the Kambar port, which was initially agreed upon for joint development, saw constant changes in its plans. Eventually, this strategic port turned into a significant bad debt for Chinese companies, and it was later handed over to India, leaving China out of the project entirely. There are too many instances of one-sided breaches of agreement. Fortunately, we stopped the losses in time. We suspended loan approvals for them, pulled back our technical staff, and listed them as a high-risk investment country. Since the beginning of this year, our investment in Iran has significantly decreased. So it's not always true that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. If he's a habitual murderer and you want to be his friend, one day he'll end up killing you too. The individual claims to be the director of the ZG Trends company. Upon investigation, it was found that the institute is engaged in research on the Belt and Road International Cooperation, and the actual name of the director is Liang Haiming, not the name he uses on Douyin. His remarks, which could be described as dog biting dog, certainly caught people by surprise. He openly admits that the United States is the enemy, while Iran has become a serial killer. Given his professional background, he surely knows about the deep strategic relationship between Iran and China. Now, when the situation turns unfavorable, he quickly turns on Iran, calling it a pawn, likely to protect the Chinese government and cover up its mistakes, continuing to deceive an uninformed public and unaware individuals. However, he did speak some uncomfortable truths. China's only choice in dealing with the Iranian situation now is damage control. It is widely known that China, North Korea, Russia, and Iran are collectively seen as the evil axis opposing the United States. The US's actions against Iran are not only a tactical containment, but also a strategic deterrent. This strike serves as a wake-up call to North Korea and China, which is increasingly aggressive towards Taiwan, as well as Russia, which continues its advances in Ukraine. North Korea will realize that while its nuclear warheads may pose a threat, they cannot prevent joint strikes from the US, Japan, and South Korea. The Chinese Communist Party will reassess the strategic costs of a full-scale attack on Taiwan, as Russia witnesses the devastation of its allies, with its capital still standing but core collapsed, potentially pushing it towards the negotiating table. This represents a bloodless nuclear judgment, dismantling nuclear programs, curbing nuclear proliferation, and shattering nuclear illusions. On X platform, users have noticed that the China-Russia-Iran-North Korea alliance is on the brink of collapse. One user wrote, "If Iran is completely defeated by the US and Israel, the CCP will lose its foothold in the Middle East." They may not say it, but they are surely desperate, fearing the entire alliance being uprooted. This person further commented, "The CCP understands that Russia is stuck in the Russia-Ukraine war, while North Korea's economy is in shambles. With Iran now removed, they will directly face the containment of the free world." In this process, Lithuania, which understands communist regimes very well, sees clearly the end result of befriending and allying with the CCP. The fragility of the China-Russia-Iran-North Korea axis has strengthened Lithuania's resolve against communism. Moreover, Beijing's rapid shift in its stance toward Iran has provided Lithuania with a solid reason to cut ties with the CCP and set an example in Europe by pursuing a clear diplomatic stance.